Hey folks, in this guide I'm going to teach you everything you need to know in order to defeat the Primal Council on Mythic difficulty. Since this is the Mythic guide, I'll only be reviewing the new or changed mechanics, as well as the recommended strategy for how your raid should deal with them. If you're looking for an in-depth overview of the basic mechanics of the fight, I'd recommend watching the Heroic guide, which can be found linked in the video description below. With all of that out of the way, let's discuss Mythic Primal Council. There are only two Mythic changes for Primal Council, and both of them are incredibly simple. First, whenever somebody steps into a fire puddle to remove their debuff from Primal Blizzard, the fire puddle will shrink slightly, and after enough people use it, the puddle vanishes completely. The second change is to Dathia's Conductive Mark, which now has no expiration time and must be cleared on an earthen pillar. If these changes sound extremely insignificant for a Mythic encounter, that's because they are. Primal Council is honestly one of the easiest Mythic bosses in this position in the raid that we've seen for a while, and the fight is basically just Heroic but with a marginally higher damage and healing check. In fact, I would actually argue that the Primal Blizzard change makes the encounter easier, because it allows you to clear up fire puddles which would otherwise take space within the room. The only downside to this change is that it means your entire raid can't clear their debuff from the same puddle. However, this is easily managed by assigning one puddle to ranged players and healers, while another puddle is used by tanks and melee DPS. As long as people respect their assigned puddles, this mechanic will end up being a complete joke. The end result of this change is that Conductive Mark is the only dangerous mechanic in the entire boss encounter, so I'll provide you with a few simple tips that your guild can use to make things easier. For starters, tanks will never randomly receive a Conductive Mark from Dathia, so the only way they'll get one is if a debuffed player runs on top of them. This absolutely cannot happen. Not only is the damage from this extremely nasty, and it has a very high chance of killing your tanks outright, but it also forces them to move the bosses in order to clear their debuffs on an earthen pillar. In this footage, you'll notice that I'm forced to roll out of position in order to clear my debuff, while my co-tank, a Blood DK with poor mobility, ends up wasting his AMS trying to survive the dot. Although we did actually manage to recover in this particular situation, giving Conductive Mark to a tank will usually cause a wipe, so you should avoid doing it at all costs. If you've decided to do the rotation strat like my guild is using in this footage, I'd also recommend keeping one or two earthen pillars alive near the melee DPS. This has the double benefit of increasing the melee's overall uptime while also reducing the chances that they'll run on top of ranged players while clearing their marks. If you want more information on the rotation strategy compared to the center strategy, I discuss it in depth during the Heroic guide. The final tips I have for dealing with Conductive Mark are fairly obvious, but still very important. When you see Dathia casting the ability, everyone in your raid should spread out, as this reduces the chances of a mark instantly duplicating. If you're able to stand directly next to a pillar when the mark goes out, that's even better, as it gives you a chance to instantly clear one off. That being said, if you notice that you don't have Conductive Mark, you need to move away from the pillar immediately. It's absolutely crucial that nobody in your raid plants themselves next to an earthen pillar, as this will make it much harder for players to clear their marks. The room is quite large, so you should be able to find somewhere else to stand. That's really all there is to handling Conductive Mark, and all of the other mechanics are completely unchanged from Heroic. If you want to learn more about the other Mythic raid bosses in Vault of the Incarnates, you can check out my boss guide playlist linked in the video description below.